You're listening to episode 60 of the Comm Cafe, Woman in My Prime. Jannice Jones stops by the Comm Cafe all the way from Spain today. And you guessed it, we talk about her album, Woman in My Prime, as well as we talk about her upcoming book, The 5 F's, as well as she shares a little story about what her experience was after attending a spirituality wellness retreat. It's not always what happens in the retreat, it's the work that can be done after the retreat. Now, sit back and enjoy my conversation with Jannice Jones. Hey, good afternoon. It's Dwayne Richards. It's time for Comm Cafe, and this is a place for entrepreneurs, small business owners, also just generally good people. We talk about mindset, personal development, professional development, and I bring on guests that have wonderful stories, people that I've met along the way. In this case, someone who I've met really just recently, like during the podcast. But she has a wonderful story. Her name is Jannice Jones. Today, she is in Spain. She spends her time between Spain and the UK. She is a friend of a friend. She is in the Color Mirrors family, so that's how we got connected. And let me get her a long list of accomplishments. So she is a author, singer-songwriter. We'll talk a little bit about the album that she actually has produced. She just showed me a copy of it. She also is a coach and a speaker, and it's really interesting. We'll get into what her coaching practice is and how that came about, as well as how she was able to write an album in kind of what would usually be a darker moment of going through a divorce, but not for her. So that's what we're going to learn about today, is her experiences at a spiritual retreat and how that triggered a real shift and a release. And here we are. Welcome to the Comm Cafe, Jannice.
Hi, thank you for having me.
You're most welcome. Let's first off, I think we'll get the book out of the way really quickly. So, what was your book about?
My book was. I'm in the middle of writing a new book, and that's the one I really want to talk about because it's called The 5 F's. It's basically a book written for women, though female. That's one of the F's. Over 50. There's another one of the F's. And it's to help women to be fabulous. That's what the book is about. And as we were speaking earlier, that's been a really important part of my journey, which is embracing how amazing we can be.
Mm-hmm. And it's so fitting to my audience, because someone asked me, like, who is my audience? I'm not sure. Not that I don't care who the audience is, but I haven't taken a poll on my audience. I know who I work with here in Canada, and I have a number of colleagues who are doing that. I guess I have a colleague who is she does fitness and other things, and she when she turned 50 a year ago, she was in the best shape of her life because she did it on purpose. She didn't just, you can go down one path or you can go down another path, and she went on purpose to say, when I turn 50, I'm going to be in the best physical and mental condition of her life, and she still is. This is amazing. Wonderful.
In my late 40s, I started surfing. I mountain biked down the Alps. I joined a reggae band at 51. I moved to another country at 55. So, it can be the most exciting time of your life. It really can. And then, it's about embracing all that we can be. And as you said earlier, Color Mirrors is part of my journey. I trained with them in the 90s. And, many years ago, Melissa, the founder, had said to me, when she goes around the room and she says lovely things about everybody, and she stopped at me and she said, "Stop rowing the boat, you're already at the shore." And it took me another 10 plus years to get to that point of going, She's absolutely right. Like we were talking about before, you know, we went on air, which is, I already know what I need to know, you know, and I can help other people do that for themselves as well and really embrace their fabulousness, which we all are.
Indeed. And I think the female part of is they've seen the light sooner than us males, I think. So I think, you know, it's, you know, it's amazing that the sense of community and other things that have been put in place to help women, not necessarily help women, but for women to support, each other, and to be examples for each other, to say, hey, I did it, let me coach you, as opposed to teach you. Or that it's not about asking for help, but it's like, let me coach you through what I've experienced, so that you can not do it easier, because easier isn't necessarily better, but just to say, here's ways of doing it. Would you like to share the story we talked a little bit about, to say, so there was a retreat, and maybe to share a little bit or do you want to share a little bit about who you are first? Like, who is, like, that you're a songwriter, and a little bit of your
intro. You know, I am a singer-songwriter, so I do actually perform both in the UK, around the Devon area and Wiltshire area, and also in Spain. I'm in Costa Almeria, so not too far from Murcia and Almeria itself, but in the mountains, so that sort of area. So I do that type of thing. I'm a singer-songwriter, so I'm a recording artist. I write books, I coach, and I also do things like healing. You know, I'm trained in Reiki and angelic Reiki, in the color mirrors system, you know, where many of us have had very, very interesting and varied life journeys to get us to the point of where we are now. You know, I also trained in coaching, counseling, or, you know, mindfulness. All sorts of things have gone into the kit bag that you are then able to draw upon to help other people to be fabulous themselves, you know. And that's it. I think it's marvelous now, because we're not one thing or the other. You know, the old me, I was in the corporate world, I was a business development director. But that's not really who I was. You know, I was all these other things as well. And now I've let go of corporate world, and I just do me. You know, I just do me now, and it's just so much more interesting and inspiring to actually live like that.
You answered my lead. My next question was, I was going to ask you if you had a more traditional corporate approach, and you did, so I don't need to ask that question anymore. I love that comment that you just said, as I do me. And this is one of the things that we work, I have a couple colleagues, we work with people around, we have a program called Monetize Me. So working with people that say, I want to do me, and then how do I create products and services and other things to generate, because we still need cash flow, even at different stages of our lives, we still need some cash flow to live the lifestyle that we want. So, all right, so let's help us get to the journey of how did you get to the let me do me? So what was the retreat?
I moved to Spain with my now ex-husband, and it became very obvious quite early on of the fact of being here, that being around each other, we hardly saw each other in the UK because, you know, we were both working and had children, etc., from separate marriages. And we moved to Spain, and suddenly we were 24/7 together. So it didn't work. The relationship didn't work in that scenario. So fair enough, you know, I walked away from the relationship. And it was a very difficult time. However, I went to see a friend that I met before, a female, who runs a yoga center locally to where I am. And I went to her originally just to have a session in Reiki, just some healing. And instead we ended up talking instead, and we didn't do anything like that. And she just said to me, listen, there's going to be a group, a spiritual group, you know, why don't you stay for the session? And I'm, you know, I'm open to all sorts of things. I mean, I've trained in many different modalities, but I've never been one for, you know, talking to angels or seeing guides or anything like that. So I didn't really know what it was I was staying for. And she said, look, just sit in the energy, and, you know, because I was really quite distraught, you know, going through this divorce. And I sat there, and everybody was going around the room, and they're all saying how amazing it was, and they'd seen this guide, and they'd heard this, and I saw nothing, I heard nothing, and I felt nothing, other than a very tiny little, I had a little bit of, you know, this feeling on the top of the head, but other than that, nothing, absolutely nothing. And I was very closed-minded about it, really, and I said, but no, it didn't do anything for me. And I went home, and I was actually living up a mountain on my own in the middle of nowhere. I had my dog and 2 cats, but there was no neighbours. It was very remote, really quite a scary place to be. And I was in a lot of fear, you know. And I went to bed and woke up the next morning, and it literally felt like I'd plugged into the national grid. And I was actually in a house which was all solar, so there was no national grid. There wasn't even any electricity in the house, but it was incredible. And I went from being a skeptic to being wow. So, you know, after that, all these songs poured out of me. My first book poured out of me, ideas for my second book, but it wasn't just ideas. I was actually able to follow through. I've always had ideas for things, but most of them stay as ideas. And the difference this time was I started something and I saw it through, and I completed it, and I launched that album in 2 countries. I actually launched it, you know. I recorded it. I wrote it all. I performed it. It's out there on iTunes, you know, it exists in the world, you know. And the same with my first book, and I'm going through the same process with my second book. And that's the amazing thing, is when we, whether it's spirit or God, the universe, our higher self, whatever it is, it's there, and it's there to help when we truly, you know, need that help. And I did need that help. But the biggest thing, it wasn't just about the things that I was able to go on and create. It was about how I felt, because I literally went from fear to faith. And suddenly I knew that everything was not just going to be all right, that it was all right. And where I'd been terrified of being up at that house on my own in the middle of nowhere, suddenly it was a complete joy. And I would wake up and see the beauty around me and feel grateful, and be able to send my soon-to-be ex-husband, who is now an ex-husband, love. Every day I was able to send him love, even whilst going through that process, so that my energy was freed up. It wasn't taken up with all the angst and the anger and the pain and the hurt and the grief. It wasn't taken up with any of that, because I was truly able to send him love and to be thankful, because had I have not met him, had I have not done all that, I wouldn't have ended up in Spain doing all the things that I love to do and having this marvelous life. So what's there to be angry about? Even though his behavior wasn't good, it wasn't the point. The point was I was free. I was free to be me. And that's what I want to help other women to do, especially women in their 40s and 50s who are going through periods of big change, and they just need somebody to believe in them and to help them through the difficulties and the periods of growth. So that's it.
That's amazing. Would you, here's a completely different question. Would you then, you know how we, like a lot of people in the, when we get into naming to say, I'm a coach, would you consider yourself more as a guide? I know people say, oh, I'm a guide, and then they don't know, you have to define what that is. But is it that are you looking to actually coach them, or is it more like guiding them through the journey that they're on?
Well, it's a mixture of both, really. And the book that I'm writing at the moment, you know, I really looked at many different aspects. It wasn't just the plugging into the universe that changed things for me. I looked at my diet. I mean, I'm vegetarian and I've now gone vegan, but it was things like, you know, my brain needed waking up again. So, you know, what do I need to do to get my brain to work how it used to work 20 years ago? You know, how do I get my body into its fittest, most strong and you know, able to do yoga and things like that? What are the things that are going to give me the most benefit? Of course, meditation. That's the thing that's made a huge difference in my life. So it's really helping the women to get in touch with not just who their, you know, what their dreams are and who they want to be and how they want to define themselves in this life, but what do they need to do? Physical, practical things that they need to do to help themselves, whether it's bathing in a bottle of color mirrors, changing their diet, drinking more water. You know, what is it that they actually need to do? What are the things that are going to make the biggest difference in their lives, and helping them to identify those and then put them in their lives so that their lives, you know, they start to shine.
Environment. So there's a gentleman I've listened to. He's actually he has a podcast on. He was an American and he actually moved to the UK, and now he runs a podcast called his name's Brian Rose. He runs a podcast called London Real, and he's interviewed some amazing. But he talks about it. He was on a lifestyle in the US and in Manhattan that was like kill him. So he actually had to do something extreme. Not everyone can do this, but then I want to ask you if you think, looking back, if you think this was one of the attributing factors to where you are today, was the change of environment. So the fact that you moved from the UK and you went to Spain. Now I know you still go back and forth, but do you think the physical change of your environment was an example that helped? Not necessarily right away, but was attributed to?
Definitely, because the pace of life here. So I do lots of work in the UK, but I do my thinking and my creative processes here in Spain, because I needed to unplug. I needed to be in a place where it's not at 1,000 miles an hour. There's not noise everywhere. Where literally where I was, I'm not in that house anymore because it went with the divorce. But you know, where I was, there was literally just open sky in front of me. There was no buildings whatsoever. You know, I would lay there sometimes, and a whole family of not buzzards, eagles, Benelli's eagles, which you get in this sort of area of Spain, would fly over, you know, rabbits and foxes and, you know, all sorts of amazing flora, fauna, whatever was around me. And just the space to think and to be. So important.
And then you just triggered another word that I've heard a lot. So, Melissa was here. We're recording this, the beginning of February, and
Yep.
Melissa was just here from South Africa, or she still is here in Canada from South Africa. And one of the key things she was saying on the weekend is like, stop doing and start just being. So be human. You don't do human, you be human. And that's a big shift, and we're getting there. I'm still understanding it. Like, stop forcing ourselves to do and just be. Now, do you think you talked about the animals and the space? How about just the fact, like in the evening, I'm sure you looked up and you could actually see the stars. I'm guessing that like light pollution. Like, and I look up in the city. I live in a major city here in Toronto. If I look up in the sky at night, I don't know if chances are it's either a satellite, an airplane, an antenna light. It's not likely a star. If you look up in the sky in Spain, I'm guessing that the sky was just like
All
you could see the universe.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, and which, before I got into the, feeling in faith instead of fear, when I would go out, I used to have a camper van, one of these big Peugeot Swift 520s, 5 meter 20, big blooming thing to drive. But when I would drive it back to the house and it was nighttime, and although it was amazing, once I was in faith, I would get out the van, I would think, wow, look at that. Before, when I was in fear, I would get out the van and think, oh my God, there's, there could be anybody hiding in the darkness, or, do you know what I mean? And it was exactly the same scenario, but my perception had changed. And that is the marvelous thing, isn't it? That when that shift happens, for whatever reason, because for some it might be sitting down and meditating, for some it might be, going running. It doesn't matter, there's many different ways to have this psychic change, whatever you want to call it. But once it's happened, everything takes on. It's exactly the same life, exactly the same scenario, but it's completely different. It's brilliant.
I like that example where you step out of the van and instead of looking up, you're like looking like sideways. And it's almost we talked about this in an interview I did yesterday, where it's there's no good or bad. It's the collision with our expectations. So if we have this expectation that something's going to, we have this almost an expectation or anticipation that something bad's going to happen. And then when all of a sudden all of a sudden a fox comes out and you kind of technically collide with the fox, it's like it's a bad thing. Or you have the expectation that I'm going to actually embrace and see nature, and when you see a fox, you're totally enlightened and you can actually connect with that animal. It's all about our expectations, or what we're anticipating, which is that's what fear is. It's a false expectation of reality. And amazing that you as an example, or prime example, to say as a night and day. Like this day I was here, like almost like one day I was this, the next day I was this, exact same scenario. So it's not like, okay, when you moved from, I was in fear in England or in the UK, and then when I moved to Spain, I was out of fear. I still took that fear with me. However, while I was there, I was able to remove the fear. It's powerful. All right. What? Not to give your coaching away. What would be one? What's the first step? Is there a first step? Like we love going to school, so they just send kindergarten. You learn how to color inside the lines or something. Maybe we should actually learn to color outside the lines. Would be actually be more appropriate. Maybe all the kids that are coloring outside the lines are really coloring the right way, and then we're forcing them to color inside the lines. When someone calls you up and you're doing the dance to figure out, is this someone that because really I'm interviewing you and you're interviewing me. I'm interviewing you to say, do I want you as my coach? And you're interviewing them to say, do I want you as a client? What's just an example? What's kind of a beginning step? Is it just getting on a call, sharing some stories?
Yeah, it's getting on a call and better like this through Zoom where you can see each other, because it's very important that energetically you get so much more information when you can see somebody rather than just hear them. You do get information when you can hear them. And later on there might be times when it's just a call because they haven't, they're not in a position to be able to do a face-to-face. But via technology, I mean, isn't technology absolutely incredible that we can do? I can be sat up a mountain in Spain and you could be in the middle of Manhattan, and we still have as if we're sat opposite each other. And that's the most wonderful thing. But it really is about, where are you? What is it you're looking for? And then, is that something that I'm the best person to help you to do that? Because I might be, or I might not be.
Yeah. And that's a great point, because that's for us to own our authentic power, our authentic knowledge, and that's where, like, I have a network of people. So when I meet with someone, I'm like, hey, that's not me, but here's someone who, like, as an example, I'm a financial advisor, I'm an accountant, but I don't do corporate taxes. I don't want to do corporate taxes, and I'm not qualified to do corporate taxes. But let me, instead of sending you to the telephone book or to the internet, let me introduce you to two of my colleagues who I know, respect, and trust. And this one specializes in this, and this one specializes in that. And then it's just it's a referral. And so I'm sure that's where you are when you're business, where you say, listen, I'm at this stage of my life, I don't have to take on every new client, every new prospect. I don't have to take them on, nor do I want to. I'm happy to have that introduction. And
20-year-olds, or I'm not really looking to work with people who all they want to do is, climb the corporate ladder or get a new job, or, they're not the sorts of people that I work well with. Who I want to work with are the people who are asking themselves the big questions. Who am I? What am I here to do? What do I want my legacy to be? What is it that I'm here to help the world with? Those questions, they're the questions that are important to me and that are important to my clients. And they're the people that I know we can work well with, as long as energetically it's the right thing for them and the right thing for me.
All right, I'm going to put you in I'm going to put my coaching hat on, and I'm going to use your own stuff on you. Jannice, I want so much great stuff already today. I'm going to do a little coaching on you, because you just said something about what is their legacy. So I would love to ask you, what's your legacy? You've had a life of experience. You're not done yet. What's that? So if we're at that point, what do you want people to remember you as? What's your legacy?
For me, it's about the heart. It's really about the connecting into the heart. And I'd really love for people to remember me as somebody who fearlessly followed their heart, and as a result of that, allowed and helped other people to do the same.
I can feel that. I can feel that in me. And the amazing thing is that you're not done yet, but you've actually you already have things in place that will live longer than you. So your album, your first book, your second book, and that's where we tell people, and I'm working on start to work on my first book, because it's like, what do you want to leave behind, or what do you want people, like, what can outlive you? So what can outlive you, like 1, 2, 3 generations? Music is a prime example. Mozart, Beethoven, the Beatles, Elvis, all things, and those estates are actually still generating. Like the Beatles, they're generating more money, or as much money now, than they did when they were alive. Which is again, when I put on my accountant hat, hey, books. Not to say everyone's going to sell and make millions from their books. There's only so many Harry Potters and Stephen King's out there, but that doesn't mean that you can't write a book for a purpose for your business as a business tool to give to your clients and to people that to share that message of your book. So,
and that's certainly the case with my second book, because it really backs up what I'm doing in the coaching arena, and it'll be a real help for people, not just those that I work with, but just generally. My album is called Woman in My Prime, which is I actually wrote that song in the 80s. And another song that's on there I also wrote in the 80s. The rest of them I wrote whilst going through a divorce. So, the actual album tells the story of love, loss, and redemption. It's actually not a miserable album at all. It's really
I hope not.
celebrate.
Well, the title is Women in Their Prime. I hope it's one of. I hope with I personally hope that with a title of Women in Their Prime, that the album is more uplifting. That even though it was written in a time where it wasn't necessarily uplifting, but I haven't heard the album, but I'm hoping that it is really uplifting songs with a title like that.
It's actually called Woman in My Prime.
Oh.
So in the singular, Woman in My Prime. And that's the title song. And that very much is about embracing being amazing, a woman in her prime, which you can be at any age. Other songs on the album, because it covers different genres. It's got folk roots, it's got country, rock, blues, 12-bar blues, it's pop. There's different genres on there as well.
So that's interesting that you have the different genres and the different areas in the different types of songs in the album. Was it challenging? Because like a book and a podcast, I'm sure an album, when you're putting that album onto iTunes, they want you to name a category of where to put it. Was that a challenge, or so maybe to share, because I don't have experience with publishing albums, can you put it into multiple categories, or does it have to go into a specific category?
You can put it in subcategory as well. So I actually put it under new country, purely because with new country there are many styles within new country, and so that seemed to be the one. Even though it's not a traditional country album, it does fall well into the new country type genre, which really does cover blues, rock, pop. There are many sub parts of new country, so it does actually fit well into that. And it's basically 2 acoustic guitars, well, 3 acoustic guitars, because on 7 of the tracks we've got a really wonderful guy called Richard Pickles who played lead on 7 of the tracks, and he is an old blues guy. So but he also hits on the countryside as well. So it fits in that sort of category really well. And then with the subcategory of either folk or pop or rock. So that's what it is. But it is an acoustic album. It's also a live album, because it was recorded in one sitting in 6 hours from start to finish.
That's really cool. All right, thank you for that, because again, it's just a little tidbit, because I like getting little tidbits of knowledge from my guests.
Yeah.
All right. So the new book you're working on, when do you think the new book's going to be out?
I think I'm working on it now, and I'm definitely working to I always set down a time scale. And it's definitely going to be finished by the end of this year, definitely. I would hope by about September, October time. That's when I'm looking to launch it. And it will be called The 5 Fs.
I like that. I like that, because it makes people curious. We did some stuff with Moore, and she said, humans are curious creatures. So use a title to not be don't be creative, but it's creative, but it makes people curious to say, well, I wonder what those 5 are. Really
Yeah.
nice. All right, how can people find you and learn more about you? And I know the album's on iTunes, but
Yeah.
what's your
I have a web,
website?
so my website is www.janicejones.com, and that's Janice with a double N. So it's JANNICE Jones, JONES.com. So that's my website. Facebook is Janice Jones. I'm on Twitter, Janice Jones. Um, all the usual.
Yeah, but
Instagram.
I like it where like Facebook's a nice. I find that Facebook's kind of the easiest one to, but the
Feed as well. Yeah.
yeah. But obviously, because you have a website, you can also go direct to the website and see a collection. I know I've been to your website. There's all the different things that you do that all but nicely under the umbrella, but it's a really nice way to go and learn a little bit more about what you do.
Yeah, everything, whether it's the music, the writing, the coaching, it's all on the website.
Wonderful. I want to thank you so much for coming on the Comm Cafe today. It was such a pleasure to get to, you know, for you to share your journey and where you're still got to go.
Yeah,
And we had some lovely stories, and I think if you're the person that's listening, will just learn it's like there's a different way of doing it, as well as we shared a number of tips about from a personal development point of view. Sometimes when we go, here's my takeaway. Sometimes when we go and do a workshop, we sit there and we think that, man, I need to shift myself in the moment. We're all programmed differently, and some of us will take a takeaway and it may come instantly, could come the next day, could come the next month, it could take a year for your body to process from that. So don't view it as a disappointment. Use it, be in the then and now, but also use some time to reflect back. Because sometimes when you reflect back, you'll realize it's like, oh wow, I got a download just at a different point in time. So that was my lesson I've learned from having you on the show. So thank you for sharing that with me.
yeah. It's been absolutely marvelous. Thank you. Been lovely meeting you.
And thank you for like one of our co-friends, as Maura says, people. If you're listening, just say yes and show up. Say yes to the opportunities that when someone asks you to come on the show. Thank you for saying yes and showing up and just being your authentic you. And it was a joy. All right, if you are listening, if you liked what you heard, leave a comment for Jannice. I will definitely pass them on. If you like the podcast, if you think that you know someone who could benefit from connecting with Jannice, hey, it's okay to share this episode with someone you know. Hop over to iTunes, like and comment there as well if you would like. And stay tuned for the next episode of the Comm Cafe.
Thank you for listening to episode 60 of the Comm Cafe, and a special thank you for sticking around to the end, waiting for the bonus. Go to communications that's FOR, results.ca/bonus, and there you'll find it. Yes, a bonus. A special thank you for sticking around to the end. That's right. Go to communications4results.ca and /bonus, and there is a little gift just waiting there for you. Hey, it's tax season. You never know what might be there to help you save $1 on your taxes. Thank you again for listening to the Comm Cafe.